It's fine. We don't like sports anyway. We're happy to be out of all the athletics that aren't gymnastics. And now for 80 minutes on the subtle differences between a 9.85 and the 9.89 on the balance beam. You're listening to Can't Read, Can't Write. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Can't Read, Can't Write, the podcast that proves Spartans can talk. I'm Mike Jones, joined as always by the man who kept hearing the name of U of M's hockey forward Dylan Duke as David Duke on the broadcast, Kevin Greck, and the man who might have saved us from this hole we already dug ourselves in, but he couldn't be bothered. Not here, Alex Plum. Greck, we got to talk about how... even if his name was David Duke, that may not be the most offensive name on the ice.
I think Dylan Duke is just as unlikable, maybe, as David Duke. But what do you got? What are you referencing?
Well, we have to look inward at Michigan State's own Red Savage.
Oh yes.
I appreciate that Red is a cool shortening of the name, but if you have that last name, maybe you just got to stick to Redmond.
Yeah, maybe you skip it. Maybe you choose something else. But yeah.
Choices were made. Choices were made.
I forgot about that. You just get used to hearing it. Except for not anymore. We're not going to hear it for a while.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into the game. But we do, of course, want to take a moment to thank everyone for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, we super appreciate it. If we could ask, share the pod with Spartans in your life, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. And of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_pod. You can also subscribe and comment on this YouTube channel at Spartan_pod on YouTube. And want to shout out everyone who actually has been commenting. It really helps. So thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah, something, the algorithm, something.
Yeah, there's whole things on how that all works that I've not taken the time to actually watch.
It's a black box. It doesn't matter. Just click it. Let it run. Thank you. What do we got, Jonesy? What do we have in store for the listener or the watcher today?
Well, we're going to head behind that green wall, and the sport that always leads, indeed, is football. We are going to spend some time on the hockey game, sincerely, because we don't know anyone, so we actually took the time to watch the game. But we're going to chat some football, media availability, spring ball. We're going to talk some men's basketball with transfer talk, Tom Izzo making the rounds, and a lively conversation that we got into on Twitter we're going to chat a little bit more about because it was worth talking about. Then we're going to talk that hockey. We're going to talk that puck. We're going to talk that hockey. And then we're going to mention that we can't talk about gymnastics because that's next week. We'll head off Grand River.
That's why we're not covering it in detail this week, is because it hasn't happened yet. That's why.
Yeah.
Entirely.
We're still champions and allies. Yep. We'll head off Grand River, which feels very brief. I feel like we had more to talk about than that. But and then we're going to take some Twitter questions. So, Greg.
Jonesy.
You are fully prepared to talk football, right?
Listen, come on. We weren't supposed to be in this situation when we had to talk about this team. It's media spring availability, and you almost never learn a thing from these people. But you've poured over every stitch, every statement, every second, every profile view, recorded thing on Instagram, every every landscape view available on YouTube. Like, what? Distill it down for us. I saw, Aiden Childs is talking to the media. Vandermark's talking about his time in the portal. Like, what do you got? What do you got? What's big? What stood out to you, Michael Jones?
A few things actually kind of stood out. First, kudos to the media, I think, for trying to get this story, but a lot of asking of returning guys, what are the differences between the staff? And the poking and prodding seemed to be encouraging the kids to dump on the previous staff.
Yeah.
No one took the bait. No one took the bait. The reflection on the guys who were in the portal who came back. So they talked to both Gino Vandemark and Derek Harmon about their time in the portal. And what stood out was the authenticity of the staff, the new staff. That is I think it was Vandemark who said that the first time I met with the coaches, we talked for like an hour and didn't talk football once. They were just getting to know me.
Just dudes being dudes, guys being guys over in the football building.
We're no different. And there seemed to be genuine camaraderie that was happening. It seemed to be a real emphasis on like getting to know everybody. And that, so the story that I think led was Aiden Childs took his offensive line out for food at Capital Prime. Gino Vandemark commented that he bought the cheapest steak because he didn't want to make Childs pay for that, which I was like, bro, he's got it. It's fine.
But also, like, it was right for him to come back to MSU because that's a very Midwestern, very land-grant university approach to things. It's like when I was growing up, I always got the burger off of the menu because it was the cheapest thing. And I always felt that my parents would look at me weird if I was like, I'll have the lobster tail. They'd probably have me like sit in the car with the windows rolled up in the middle of the summer. So that I get it.
Explains so much about your relationship with food.
Yes. Well, after I expressed my disappointment that there was no soil on the menu, then I would land on the burger.
Sure.
So I get it. Gino and I understood. So continue.
There seemed to be some nuances and differences in the way things are coached, which, I'll just say from an offensive line perspective, can't hurt.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know that there's. It's this time of year is interesting. The faces they put out there, right? Because it says something about who they expect to be the faces of the team. And it's interesting they chose two dudes who were in the transfer portal and had them available for the media. I think that is. That's a confidence in what you're selling, right? Like those are people who are going to be out there promoting the program, promoting the coaches. It's not like we're not in a heightened recruiting period. So all of the publicity you're looking for, I think we know football coaches are psychopaths enough that every decision is a deliberate one. And so I don't know. It was intriguing.
What about the new additions? What have we learned about the Oregon State fellas?
That was interesting. Again, Gino Vandemark was talking about how something we talked about on the pod. I think when Sheehan was here, the advantage of having an offensive lineman, a tight end, and a quarterback all coming from the same system,
same place.
Yeah. And people who really have to know the offense. Not that a wide receiver or running back don't have important responsibilities, but a tight end has pass catching and blocking responsibilities that are pretty sophisticated. Getting a whole line to be talking the same language and the same terminology, having someone there who can kind of be your translator and get you up to speed, and obviously having a quarterback come back who played meaningful minutes is super important too. So. That'll
be something. Having
some confidence.
First-year quarterback in the program who's in his second year in the system, like that'll be a new and interesting kind of wrinkle to this whole thing. It's not often that you get it that way. So that's fantastic. Anything What's your favorite? What's your favorite little nugget that kind of stood out to you? What were you like? Ooh, I like that. Tell me.
I feel bad. This is bad pasta in podcasting, but I think the most telling thing was they're being just as cagey as you'd expect a football coach to be, not giving away too many details.
That might
so
be,
if you're choosing,
that might have informed the decision of who to put in front of the media. Like, who can we trust to fill time and not say anything, just like us? That might have been a factor in that whole decision, because they put me out there, they put Plum out there, it would just be, who knows what would happen. I'd be talking about how Dylan
on this
Duke
play,
is actually David Duke. Yes, the whole time. But they put you out there, and it's all going to be like, ponder, think, all that boring stuff. So, I get it. Makes sense. Did they say anything about spring ball? About like expectations for spring ball, stuff that's happening? Did they tell us if the spring game is going to be an actual game or more of this like stupid, different units scrimmaging against one another garbage? It's my only hope
word
right
on
now
the street
for the spring is
I think it's going to be practice.
Spring game.
Take a tug.
Yeah, they better be selling beers on the concourse. That's all I'm saying. What else? What do you got?
Let's talk some men's hoop.
Are we, Michael? Podcast meeting. Are we trafficking in transfer rumors on this podcast?
I think the same rules that apply to recruits should apply to transfers. That unless there's something about the recruit that tells us something about the program, we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
In this particular instance, we have quality reporting that MSU is meeting with Javon Hadley. I think he's 6'7", guard from Colorado. That is interesting for a couple reasons. One, MSU on its current roster doesn't have anyone between 6'6" and 6'8". And the person who used to guard people like that is AJ Hogard, who we all expect to be gone. So we're looking at a long wing, a tall wing, to get some size on the perimeter. Okay. That tells us something. It also, I think it's also noteworthy that we saw a lot of big names hit the portal and MSU wasn't attached to a single one. What that means, who's to say? But we are attached to this one, and there was a time where it was believed this was a lock for Iowa State, and then MSU seems to have made at least somewhat of a push. Whether this particular guy comes to MSU, who's to say? We're not going to chat about it from that perspective, but it does tell me that Tom Izzo still has some of the magic left of being able to get in front of a guy.
So you said it for just a moment, and it's the thing that I'd like to go back to about talking about transfers. Not a lot of center talk. Not a lot of center talk with any degree of juice to it. And this, I fear, is going to be a real problem. Like, it would have been naive of me to think that all of a sudden Tom Izzo is going to jet set and talk to everyone taller than 6'10" that was answering entering the portal. I know better than that. But to have truly very little credible evidence that they're looking at a center yet is so concerning to me. Like, all of my red flags are going up right now that they're not jumping on this immediately. That, like, I don't know even what to do about next season right now. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do with my hands. It's a need. What you're talking about right now is a need that needs to be addressed. That's good. But there's another big glaring need on this team and this program.
The need of all needs.
Yeah. And there's just been nothing on this. There's been speculation. There's been a lot of speculation from fans and media. But as far as I've seen, there's not been a whole lot with substance on this. So
I don't know if they're waiting for DJ Burns to be done at North Carolina State and come on over. Because I'd take that man in a heartbeat.
Yeah. But my hope for that would be that Tom Izzo is in the stands for every one of those games watching with Matt Ishbia sitting right next to him. That's what I would
want. With a bag of money that has the dollar sign.
That, and then also for him, a nice like buffet also. Like have Ishbia buy like 5 more seats down the line with all of his favorite tasty treats in it. That's what I want to see. And then also, as I joked last week, Derek Nix sitting at the end being like, it works. It's a good program. You don't have to run that well. You can let your arms just flop around. It's fine. That's bro. Oh God.
You have to. Well, I guess you don't. I mean, so we've heard that there were some meetings with the centers and some of their family members. And you know, I think we can say the way Couch has been talking publicly about the centers, that it's likely Madi is back. And the one person that, you know, I don't know that he's super said this, but just reading the tea leaves on how he's talked about it, Jackson Kohler's the question mark on whether he comes back. What's interesting to me about that is that I think maybe I'm a bit alone on this, that of the centers that I might be interested in keeping, he might be number 1.
Your preference would be in all of this to get Jackson Kohler back?
If I could only keep one of the 3 centers on the roster, that might be my preference.
Yeah.
Because it's clear he had a green light to shoot a 3. The way they talked about him pre-foot injury was indicative of they were pleased. And it's clear the whole offense got set while he sat out for half the year.
Yeah.
And when you have point guards running the point who only have dudes with no hands to throw the ball to, you get in the habit of running the offense without a meaningful post presence. If Jackson Kohler had been around from the jump of the year, I don't know that plays out the same way. I get that people think he's not a D1 player or at least not a high major player. And I understand, but I just don't know that we've actually had the opportunity to evaluate that in a meaningful way. So if you told me you'd rather have Carson Cooper stay of the 3, you could only pick one, I wouldn't fault you for that. But
as a 5, do you know how many dunks Jackson Kohler had this year?
He can't jump that high.
0 dunks. 0 dunks.
Yeah.
So
I know.
And also only 13 for 25 on close 2s. Like, something has to be done. Honestly, I might quit the podcast. Upper Deck Jerk Guy, hold me accountable to this. I might quit the podcast if nothing happens in the center position. Keyski, come at me if this happens. Bro, something has to be done up front. You can't roll the balls out. You know what you have with 2 of these guys now. You know who you have with Carson Cooper, and you definitely know who you have with Mady Sissoko. You can make excuses for Jackson Kohler. but it can't be the same. You can't do it again. You made the mistake this year already. You can't do it a second time. So,
particularly when Tom said that he thought they would get more out of the 5. And they didn't. I guess, let me ask you this, though. You know, and this maybe segues a bit into our next conversation about Izzo being in the media. But, you know, one of the things that he's talked about, lamented about the transfer portal, is that if you hop from school to school to school, like, where's home for you? Where do you come back to? Tom Izzo, historically, has not made a habit of running people out of his program.
But he has at the same time. Yeah, it has happened. Where's Javon Bess? Where's Javon Bess call home? Michael Jones.
Where do you think Foster Lawyer calls home?
Well, I think Foster Lawyer has found where his bread is buttered in terms of Twitter interaction. We'll say that.
Yeah. Did you know he's in the NBA right now coaching?
Coaching?
He's on a staff.
He's on a staff somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. He's probably like cutting film or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, the same with who is that? Kithier also. I don't know if ran out of the program or, hey, there aren't minutes for you here anymore. But, you know, I just don't know. It's too bad someone like you can't get Mahdi as a walk-on. Like, I mean, at some point in time, be like, hey, man, I'm going to pull your scholarship, but my friend Matt over here has you covered.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about this anymore. It bums me out. I'm glad that we're working on, you know, a big wing, but there was such a glaring weakness with this team and the idea that it might not be addressed when you have the resources
and that he doesn't have a
MSU
recruit.
Has. Wild, just impossible. So let's move on. Let's talk about something else. What else is here for basketball?
All right.
What do you got?
Well, you put in here that Izzo's been in the media. So I don't know that we need to rehash the entire interview. But he's been out and about. He's been making some rounds. Certainly, we're not finding ourselves in a Nick Saban situation with Tom Izzo.
He's not in the Aflac commercials.
Well, I just mean to say he's still here. I did want to chat about something we talked about last week, though, which is we had a whole conversation about fan interactions or the way fans talk about athletes on Twitter, and I'll say that I said maybe they should just stay off Twitter. And you got to give credit where credit's due when people push back in a compelling way, and want to shout out Joe Ashworth for rightly pointing out that the peak monetization for some of these players, which is also something that Tom talked about indirectly, but comes in college. They're not going to have an opportunity to monetize themselves ever again in this way, and that their social media following is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so should they just stay off Twitter? I think it's fair to, and I did say, first of all, with this team, there's no evidence they're promoting shit on Twitter.
Yes, that's correct.
But you can say, look at Golke from Oakland. Has a moment. Advertisers seize on that moment.
Sure.
And you, without knowing for certain, but you might say part of his compensation could be tied in some way to the extent to which he's able to leverage his current following.
Yeah.
So there's value in them collecting a following. So anyway, it was a worthy point. I don't know that how much it matters for the most say for some non-revenue sports, that following might actually be a lot more relevant to monetization. I don't know in the non-revenues how much that's true, but it's a worthwhile point for consideration.
Yeah. And I think it's fair pushback. I would say though that they can put their United Wholesale Mortgage note out there, or Gilkey can, what was it, like Subway or whatever it was. He can do all that stuff without the interactions, without searching for himself, without searching for his name, without searching for his number, without, doing what we were actually referencing was getting into the weeds, dwelling on it, really kind of seeking it out. And again, not making excuses for people that are going straight at players, not making excuses for things that we've said on this podcast, but suggesting that maybe during the season at least, give it a rest. You don't need to be on it nonstop.
Post game, stay away.
Yeah.
Post game.
Yeah. Maybe you decide a time, Wednesday mornings, or when you go on and you post, can't wait to originate loans at United Wholesale Mortgage. Signed AJ Hogarth.
Or maybe you take all that SD4L money and you just pay somebody to tweet for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because God knows they can afford it. So, but all the same, it was valid pushback. There's no reason that they can't be. But like, I just don't know. I don't know how you manage as a public figure, but I have to imagine that searching your name. I mean, think of the ways in which we clowned the collective fan base, have clowned on Dan Dockich or Dane Fife for the ways in which they search out content about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, what is the difference between, like, other than they're paid less than some of the players?
Well, also their brains are still being formed when they're in college. One presumes that Dan Dockich is in his final form at this point. I know that his brain is in a particular state of atrophy and decline. So maybe there is actually something to be said for that as well. But still, we still probably didn't get to the heart of that discussion to begin with, which is one of the main reasons why it was deemed irresponsible or uncouth to be very critical of these guys is that they were student athletes and they weren't professionals. That's no longer the case. That's out the window now, particularly in basketball, particularly with these guys in basketball. And I'm not sure we quite landed on it there. Like, I still maintain that there is a degree to which you should be able to criticize these guys in public forums. Certainly, you can go over the top. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. But for the most part, I think our criticism here is fair and grounded and researched and backed up. There are times that we,
just put a cherry on top of it in a way
for a bit, it's comedy, comedy, you can say whatever you want. But anyway, I get what Joe Ashworth is saying. I think it's fair. I don't think it is. I think it would be more fair if NIL had worked the way that NIL was supposed to work. I think I'd find that to be an even more compelling argument. But in the current market reality of NIL, sus, I would say. So anyway, we'll get there. We got all summer to work this out, get to the bottom of it. bring Joe Ashworth on. Do a Lincoln Douglas style debate on the subject. Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We get content to fill.
Yeah.
All right. You ready to talk some puck?
Well, we know puck. I've watched more overtime hockey than my heart cares to acknowledge over the last 2 weeks. So I'm happy to talk some puck. Game 1, we should touch on it real quick. Game 1 against Western, down 2 in the third. And I don't know about you, but I had written that game off at a certain point. But then get a really good goal, get a goal after Troy Augustine's been pulled, go into overtime as discussed, and score pretty brutal for Western. Score on a just kind of put the puck on net, deflection off of a defenseman's stick into the goal, like brutal way to lose an NCAA tournament game, and one that they had played really well in and deserved to win. But MSU advances in the first game to take on, of course, why wouldn't it be anyone else? U of M in the second game. Winner goes, of course, to the Frozen Four. And man, North Dakota in their game against Michigan in the third period might as well have just not taken the ice, is what it felt like watching those 20 minutes of play. Just, I don't know truly until like the last 3 minutes if they even had a shot on goal in the third period against Michigan. Anyway, we take on U of M. If you didn't get a chance to watch it because it was Easter Sunday, basically U of M hops out in front. Or no, we hop out in front. Power play goal.
Yeah.
U of M kind of outplays us for about a full period.
I think that first goal.
A little sauce?
I wasn't certain that they weren't going to take it back when they were doing the replay.
U of M outplays us for about 15 game minutes. Second period, we come back. I think we kind of controlled the second period. We're doing pretty well in the third period. And then U of M scores twice in 13 seconds. And that's just the game. And they scored. David Duke scores on just a skill play. Just driving the puck in, speed, putting it on net, driving it around Troy Augustine. And then they score on a power play to just kind of really ice it at the end on a slashing call that can be debated. But it sucks. It sucks to lose that game against that program under those circumstances when you're already 4-1 against that team and you already beat them in overtime on your home ice just 8 days prior. It sucks to not go to the Frozen Four, but it especially sucks like that to that program. So the good news is...
Yeah, so...
Go ahead.
Like, let's say some nice things, because I think there's a couple critical points we can and should make about the team in this particular game. So, hanging 2 banners.
Yeah.
Banners, to your point, with the Big Ten logo, 0 currently. So
now,
this is great.
2 banners. Not 1 banner.
2 banners. It's
2 banner.
That's half as many banners as Purdue basketball has. So that's a win. And unfortunately, they moved from 3 to 4. And one of the banners they have is an NIT banner. But anyway,
And of course, Zach Edey told us on Instagram how excited he is about all of that. But continue.
Yeah, have you seen the other videos going around about Zach Edey?
No. Wait.
I'll just send you some links. There's some video of Zach Edey going around that. Anyway, so
NC State fans got a hold of some stuff, and they decided now's the time to use it.
So this is all very exciting. It's also super exciting how young our team is. There's a lot coming back next year.
Yep.
You know, and this was a big deal. The goal differential between MSU and U of M coming into this game, despite the 4-1 record, was I think 2 goals.
Yeah.
So evenly matched teams, which made it all the worse that we had to play them again, is because we knew they were evenly matched.
Right.
It felt lucky in some ways to be up 4-1. That said, here's the thing. More than anything, U of M clearly dominated in the neutral zone. At times, it felt like MSU was playing old school dump and chase, hoping to establish themselves. Never seemed to work out. U of M was far superior in being able to establish in our zone and control things there, which led to increased opportunities. But beyond that, we'll never know if MSU could have been more dominant because they were constantly taking the dumbest of penalties.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's a youth thing, but like it's not just the power play opportunities that U of M had to capitalize on and score goals, but it was the fact that you've now made yourself shorthanded and have limited your own offensive potential. So and
that was at the time against the number one power play team in the country. So you not only are you giving any team an opportunity, but you're giving a team that kind of excels in that situation and held them off on power plays. I think they were 0 for 4 on power plays until the last one of the game, which ultimately
I don't even think that's the point, though.
Right.
Is you're just not even playing even at that point in time.
Correct.
So
that's
you've
2
taken,
minutes off the game clock.
Yeah, and so 0 for 4, that is 8 minutes of time that you didn't have to make a meaningful assertion of yourself. 10 in like if we include the other one, that's what, a sixth of the game that you didn't put yourself in a position to win. And that's stupid. You're right. There are a couple you can be like, those are kind of weak penalties, but there were some really dumb ones too. Just what are you doing?
Yeah, Artie Lushnov comes up well after the play, touches a dude on the back, he tumbles, 2 minutes roughing. That kind of stuff. You just can't have it. It puts you at such a tremendous disadvantage in a game that you need every inch. And it was the difference. It was the difference. I know it's 5-2 in the media guide, but that game was tense. Going down to the last minute. So in terms of next season, you mentioned the youth. There are 6 players graduating. It's possible, I guess, the in-house comes back, but I don't think we know how that's going to go one way or another. Nathaniel Bott of the LSJ kind of did a rundown of everything. Go take a look at that. Puts a compelling case forward for why Troy Augustine is going to be back, although I think most people expect that would be the case because he's so young and he's a goaltender. I mean, he was second team all Big Ten. All of the other goaltenders in the Big Ten are like 42, basically. They all have fully vested 401ks and families. And so anyway, also puts forward a compelling case. I know we just talked about how he spent 2 minutes in the box, but Artie Lushnov, who's expected to go top 5 somewhere in the draft, puts forward a case. It's not uncommon for a defenseman to come back and play 2 years in college, particularly because he is so young and he's not, this is his first year in America. So very potential is there that he'll be back. Kind of that all Big Ten type of player. And Isaac Howard, first round pick by the Lightning, kind of go back and forth. Maybe it's possible that they ask him to do something else, but potential that he'll be back as well. So expect some transfers to come in. Things will work themselves out on the roster generally. But a very young team is going to keep some high-end talent in all likelihood and have an opportunity to build around that. So they were already a 1 seed in this year's tournament. They already put a Big Ten championship banner up. You've got the Big Ten, the reigning Big Ten coach of the year. There's a lot to be encouraged by with this program, in spite of the outcome of this one game. There's a lot to be encouraged by, and there's a lot of reason why you, dear listener, should make your way on down to MUN, as we've been saying. Get down there, man. It's a good time. So, Jonesy, anything else on hockey before we do that women's hoops?
No, other than I worry that with hockey, because now I've actually become a little emotionally invested, that they're going to turn into the way that we talk about basketball is unhealthy. Like, we're not kind even to a good team. Like, the way we talked about that 2020 Cassius team was at times very unkind. But and I wonder if we're going to do the same thing with hockey.
Okay, so I'm going to push back. I'm going to be the Joe Ashworth in this situation. One, I would contend that we haven't had a good team to be mean to in a long time. So I don't even know if that's true. And two,
that's fair.
That's fair. Recall that last Cassius year. I've got the balloons up. I got the balloons up because my camera is like, hey, let's put some balloons on there. Why not? Go on YouTube. You'll see that. I think if you do the devil's horn, it's going to give you like a let's rock thing as well. It's not doing it. Great. Thanks, Apple. But I seem to recall us telling people to enjoy Cassius Winston while he was there. So we can be kind. We can say nice things. We just haven't had a reason to in basketball for several years now.
So many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yes, these teams are going to the tournament, but they're not living up to expectations, and they're not living up to the expectations set by Tom Izzo. So I get what you're saying.
They're also bad.
I get what you're saying on this, and I suppose it's possible that next year they take a step back, and then we're like, there was a lot of promise. Where's the payoff? But
oh, no, I just mean to say that I can see a world in which aggressively critical, because it in theory I should be celebrating. We hung 2 banners. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But instead I'm kind of pissed at him about the dumb penalties. So I just don't know if
we celebrated last week. We celebrated last week, and we were right too. We celebrated the week before
also, that. You have to say, when you've played a team 5 times, what's the point in the games if that doesn't matter?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that the NCAA, it's not the same as like the tournament committee in basketball or in football that sort of like pick and choose what the seeds are going to be. It's much more regimented than that. And like,
yes,
it happens like it happens according to the pairwise ranking. So it is what it is, so to speak. But it was so dumb to have these teams play each other in that environment, to have 3 Michigan teams going out to St. Louis, to have 2 teams that are now playing each other for the 6th time. It's just dumb. It's just dumb.
Yeah.
So.
But, you know, I think 25% of all hockey teams make the tournament. Like,
yeah, there's just not that many hockey teams. So.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, like, I'm fully aware what the situation is. There's, I think, one other region they could have moved Michigan to make this work. You can simultaneously say MSU did things wrong, should have just won the game, whatever. But, you know, if you're a Michigan fan, please look inward if you can't have empathy for the fact that, like, it was 4-1, like, we know y'all have a good team. They were a tight 4-1, but it sucks. It sucks to have to lose to Michigan.
And please look inward if you're going to put a guy on the ice with D Duke on the back of his jersey, because I know there's another Duke on the team. That maybe some of us will just see that as David Duke all the time. Because we're already upset. So of course we're going to go there because the hatred is already seething through us. So just, be kind on that as well.
All right. Real quick note on MSU women's hoops. Didi Hegeman has entered the portal. For those who don't know, that's MSU's starting point guard. I was a little surprised by this. And frankly, I don't know if this is a situation where she thinks that maybe there's a more lucrative opportunity for her elsewhere, because there are certainly schools that have a more fervent fan base around women's hoops. Or is this Robin Freilich turning the page? I don't know. Time will tell. But it is of note that a major piece to this team's, by I think most standards, successful season is moving on to continue to play college hoops and not stay at Michigan State. So something to monitor, I guess, is what I'll say.
You know what else we should monitor? Mama's Merc.
Yeah, you do a little ad read. Give the folks a taste of Mama's Merc. You've been there more recently than me.
Yeah, I've been over to the Mama's Merc. I've been over to the Mama's Merc a couple times. And let me tell you, when you walk into the Mama's Merc over near Grass Lake off of 94, you're going to say to yourself, I could be anywhere right now. I could have gone to any number of places. I could have been any saloon in these here parts. But you're going to sit down. You're going to have an experience there that you're going to say to yourself, this was the right spot. It couldn't be anywhere else but this. Maybe you talk to someone over one table over. Maybe you make up conversation with the wait staff. Maybe the owner comes over, says, "Hey, you got that can't read, can't write discount? It's coming in off the bill." Maybe you talk about
10%.
Their plans for the place. But just don't miss this opportunity. Don't take it from yourself. Okay. Next time you're driving down the 94 corridor between Ann Arbor and Jackson, Michigan, and you just want one of them home cooked meals, do yourself the greatest favor and stop at Mama's Mercantile and Eatery on exit, whatever it is. Look at the sign. It's going to be on the sign here soon. We're told. We have it on good authority. When you see it, step on in, get yourself a drink, get yourself the special, whatever it might be that day, and just enjoy your time.
Specials are legit. And mention Can't Read, Can't Write that we sent you, and you'll get 10% off your bill. And truly, it's really good food. Go. We also got to shout out listener Mike Jones, and I'm going to make a terrible decision right now.
What's the terrible decision? As good a decision as it is to go to Mama's Mercantile and Eatery, what's the terrible offsetting decision that you're going to make here, Mike Jones?
We're going to find out if we've got a fast friend situation or a hate yourself and go to therapy because you hate yourself decision. So I'm taking take a shotta and bite back of Mango Shotta, a mango jalapeno tequila, which sweet as mango, but still a spicy bitch. What comes next? Hashtag take a shotta.
But still,
can we talk about how they have the tear off thing? Like there's a cork involved, but it's just a screw cap,
screw top underneath. Listen, there have been times in my life where I've chosen not to purchase a bottle of wine because it has the screw off top and not the cork. So that's smart.
That's wrong.
Good on them to not put up the money for the cork, but then be like, put the foil over it. That's going to be our intermediary step, so that when Kevin Greck looks at it in the aisle, he doesn't choose to get something else simply because he doesn't see cork. What do you got? Walk us through it. Do a tasting here. Do a live tasting reaction for us.
So you get the mango, and then you get something different.
Mm.
And fuck it.
Spicy like a bitch.
Yep. So anyway, that's Mango Shada. It's actually...
Oh, you went back for pull number 2. He's not retching, but he is reacting. Ooh. What do you got? Walk us through it. What are you feeling? What are your emotions?
It sits right back here. The heat. They should have just done spicy tequila. Like, whew. It's not sweet as mango. It is a spicy bitch. Which is not. You know what, though? Here's the thing. Good. When Kevin Grett comes to visit, and he is planning a visit, the Mango Shada will come out. We'll chase with some fast friends because it's cream-based.
Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not planning to visit it anymore. We'll see. Should we go off grid or Mike Jones?
Yep.
We should. For pull number 3.
Yeah. It's actually kind of addicting. It's quite good, but also terrible. But quite good. It's like Tenet. And
then do you like relive it all backwards again? And then you get back to the beginning and you're like, oh, actually, let's go. Let's do it again. Let's pop in that machine. Let's put the bullet back into the chamber. There's sort of like they're catching the bullet thing. NC State, America's team. What do you think about this just generally? Well, is it fair to say that it's still a chalky tournament at this point? You got your Purdue, you got your UConn, but you do have your NC State. So what are we saying? Is this a very chalky tournament still or no?
Who's the 4th team?
I hate myself right now.
I kind of feel the same way, but I feel like I need to own it.
Oh my God. Bama, which we need to talk about anyway, because Nate Oates is doing stuff that Tom Izzo would never do under any circumstances. And also, I know that we talk about how Nate Oates wants this job. He's never going to get it. It's never going to happen.
No.
Sorry to Nate Oates.
Unless Alan Haller...
I think that would be tough, even for Alan Haller on his drunkest, family feudiest day. I don't think that would happen.
Yeah.
It's just too far removed from Tom Izzo. So
is NC State America's team? I don't know. I will say this. I truly don't know how anyone who enjoys the game of basketball at any level can watch Purdue and think that that is enjoyable. You and I chatted about this, but I want to ask you here, can you remember a team that is going to lose one player and you're going to say, oh, they suck now? Because Purdue...
their whole team is gone now.
Yeah, Purdue's going to lose Zach Edey, and they are going to be hot, humid toilet water after this. Like, I mean, truly, they are a shitty team playing shitty, boring basketball with one player who is fantastic. Like, he gets all the calls in the world, but, like, let's not deny his efficiency at the rim. Like, let's not deny his acumen at times. He looks vapid and vacant, but in a Paul Davis sort of way, if we're being really honest.
Which is so endearing to all of us. No, it was pretty good to me. I did enjoy that Fletcher Lawyer kept being called Foster, even though now his accomplishments going to the Final Four are greatly exceed any of Foster Lawyer's. collegiate
Australian for beer. What can you say?
Yeah. But they still have Braden Smith next year, all Big Ten player.
So,
but, I mean, I want him on my team. I want him as our next point guard. So I still want him. They've got some options. But I do know what you mean, because as we've talked about on this podcast before, if you do a plot, and there are multiple different services that you can do this on, where you do usage stats versus offensive efficiency, and you can plot all of the college basketball players for the last 10 years, Zach Edey stands alone in the upper right-hand corner, just like an order of magnitude past everyone else, as being such high usage and so efficient, both in terms of just his ability to be involved and dish the ball out, his ability to just reach up and put the ball in. Did you see when he was cutting the nets down, partly for him, partly for Gene Katie, who looks
great,
maybe better. I mean, I didn't see the hair. He was wearing a hat, so maybe he actually looks better now than he did when he was actively coaching. He doesn't need to jump to put the ball in the hoop. So I know what you're saying. It's going to be for them such a colossal vacant hole in the rotation and in their program when he's not there anymore. And that's not just him in his stature. That's him in his role in the team and his ability to even pick up fouls all the time, even in the tournament. Remember that narrative that we had all spun for ourselves, that after he got away from Big Ten officials, that he was going to start falling out of games, or certainly he wouldn't get as many calls as he was getting? Nope. Wrong.
The thing that Matt Painter has done versus Rick Barnes, right? Versus Shaka Smart. Name your classic, I am actually kind of a shitty coach in a certain way.
Or at least I definitely underperform in the tournament.
Yeah, so when it comes time to be good, I'm not. But credit to Matt Painter. He hit up, I think, BQ over the Athletic.
And hit up like, somebody you over the Athletic. Carry some water for me?
Yeah, and Brendan Quinn's like, sure, let me just get done chit-chatting with Graham, and then I'll come over and carry your water for you. Like, I'm going to write up a whole fucking article about how it's so hard to officiate Zach Edey. And it's all going to start with this quote about Matt Painter being like, hey, so many refs have told me that, like, we can't call fouls on him or fouls on everybody every play, but your guy is getting murdered every play. Shut up, Painter.
Yeah.
But the credit where credit's due. Masterclass. He started working the refs pre-tournament in the press. Like, I mean, truly,
it's very Coach K. It's very Coach K to be like, working the refs before I'm even talking to the refs, just setting the expectation. This is how the program operates. It's very Wisconsin back in the day. Wisconsin would have this reputation of we don't foul. Never mind. Like they only just didn't foul, but their upper body, lower body, they were just like kicking dudes in the groin all over the place.
They were dry humping.
Shins. Like just Maybe there's a reason we don't call that, It's part of the game. It's a Big Ten. It just means more. It's not been fun. It's not been fun watching this Purdue team progress through the tournament. I almost got to the point, listener, didn't quite get there, almost got there, where I was like, maybe I'm relying on Illinois to carry the torch for the Big Ten. And then they got absolutely torched. My God. Have you ever seen anything like that?
You hate to see it.
Wild.
A 30-0 run? That's got to be a record, right?
Impossible that could happen almost in basketball generally, but much less in an Elite Eight game. Crazy.
Couldn't happen to a nicer coach than Brad Underwood, and a more deserving star player than Terrence Shannon Jr.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'll just say this. The thing is, in case anyone has any mistakes, and I don't think anyone listening to this podcast does, fuck the Big Ten. I am rooting for every team that plays Purdue at this point in time. Do not care. I'm actually kind of hoping that DJ Burns has become enough, to take this back to NC State, of America's sweetheart that like he maybe gets the benefit of the doubt on foul calls against Zach Edey.
I bet he doesn't. But
no, he won't.
That dude's going to be fouled out after 4 game minutes.
But you know what?
So give me your preference list. NC State, UConn, Bama, Purdue. Preference list for who gets the natty.
NC State, they're obviously the most relatable school to Michigan State. They're the state school in a state with 2 schools that share the name, right? Go Wolfpack.
Sure. I think in that way, Purdue's also pretty relatable, but we have reason to dislike them. Continue.
No, because Purdue and Indiana can't share the same majors, so they're different schools.
But being married into an Indiana household, I understand those 2 schools and how they operate and how they. Okay, go ahead.
Purdue rocks enough arrogance. I do not find them relatable in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, continue. I mean, I get it. You're a big closet Indiana fan. Forks up for Mike Jones. You heard it here first. You just love forks. You love them up. You hate the old brass spittoon. You have no respect for it. I might quit this podcast right now. And we don't need to figure out the center situation on the basketball team. This is a forks
Let me just
down
see if I can turn
podcast.
you off,
Mike Jones,
real quick.
All right. So NC State, and then no one. Is that where you're at? Just like, I hate the like.
No, to win it all. Is that the question? To win it all?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's very clear. NC State, Bama, UConn, Purdue. And to be very clear, I'm nearly 50-50 with UConn and Alabama. I couldn't really care less. But if I'm going to root for somebody to not go back-to-back, then that makes sense to me. Because truly being a fan of a school means that what you really are at your core is petty as fuck about every other school.
Speaking of being petty, can you imagine if our school had the number of natties over the last 15 years that UConn has? We would be insufferable. Oh my God. The world is so lucky that there are basically no UConn fans. I don't know any of them. I've never interacted
but they are
with one.
Super insufferable on Twitter.
But there's only like 7 of them. But can you imagine if MSU fans had that many natties to fall back on? You couldn't be in the room with any of us. It would be awful for everyone else. But continue your thought.
No. So this is a conversation that I've heard take place on some other podcasts about and it ties back into something we talked about as it relates to the streak. Because there's some folks who are insistent that like the streak matters. It really matters. That it sets your floor for what you are as a program. But I can see you. But like
I'm winding up over here.
Because I'm gonna take some of the charge off here for you. Because truly, fuck the streak. Give me 5 natties. Like
I would trade
this isn't complicated.
1 natty, bro. One more natty. I mean, we have a natty as part of the streak, but I would.
But could you imagine
the streak
since
for another
2000, to say that we missed the tournament 5 years since 2000, but we won 5 natties.
I would take that.
This isn't
every
complicated.
Day.
This is
I would miss
not
the tournament 5
complicated.
times for one natty during that time since 2000. I think it is also interesting about the floor situation. I think over the summer it might be worth exploring what truly makes a blue blood program, because I don't think there's a lot of people that include UConn up in that upper echelon blue blood. And when they do, it's with asterisk of clearly because of the number of natties that they've won since the 90s, they should be a blue blood, but also it doesn't really feel like they're a blue blood. There's gotta be something else. There's a je ne sais quoi to what is and is not a blue blood. Like the idea that UCLA could still be a blue blood or Indiana could still be a blue blood instead of the fact that they haven't won anything in the entire time that we've been alive. But UConn's won more than anyone, by the way.
With multiple coaches.
Yep. Three different coaches. And one of which is an
doesn't
absolute
tramp
disaster.
Stamp that on their ass.
Correct.
But like
I think this is worth discussing. Like, there needs to be something about your program, and then it also needs to win. And UConn doesn't have that thing about, like, there is that other thing that you need about that your program. And I think it's that they don't. I think it's worth. I'm segment fishing right now. Why isn't
Cedar
UConn,
Village Bagel? Put this on your notes app.
Yes. Why isn't UConn solidly in that top 5 of who we would all accept? Duke, Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky. And then you could, I guess you got like a rotating cast, whoever it is. UCLA, Indiana, Arizona, I guess sometimes you see them up in there.
Where the fuck did they don't get anywhere.
What have they done our entire lives, you know? So they should, though. They have the resume for it, but they're just not. And I'd like to explore why that is. Someday. Not now. Not this day.
Someday. All right, let's chat about 3 more things off Grand River before we get to these Twitter questions. One, Kim Mulkey. Is it Mulkey? Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I just recognize her by the sequins. That's how I know her.
Oh, I just see January 6th footage, and then I just know.
It's the sequence in the January 6th footage.
At the Trump rally, really decked out, but they get like shredded when she's breaking through glass. Anyway, for those who don't know, there were some rumblings online that there was going to be a big story breaking about her in the Washington Post. And then indeed, Kim brings it up in press conferences and indicates, screw the WAPO. Like, they're terrible, trash journalists, blah, blah, blah. In fact, says they've been chasing me for this story for 2 years, which only adds to the intrigue.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a real Streisand effect situation that you've got there.
Yeah. Then you start to be like, wait, was she at Jan 6? Like, what is this that's happening
here?
She
kill homeless people so that she feels alive? Like, what is going on?
She drink blood? Like, is she a flat earther? What's going on? So the story breaks. And I guess, Greg, before I comment on the story, could you share with listeners, for maybe who don't know about Kim Mulkey, what her persona and personality are, like, on the court?
Oh, Kim Mulkey, she likes to get into it a little bit. You know, she's Southern. She tells it as it is. In case you don't know, she's LSU's head basketball coach, reigning national champions. And she's got a real fiery affect about her. But she is Southern. Let me tell you, she is Southern. Is that good? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, but like she makes Tom Izzo look tame
Yes.
in her fieriness. Has touched referees and gotten away with it before. And
there's lots of yelling. There's lots of loud suits. She's just as loud as the suits and the sequins. Continue.
Mm-hmm. So the story is she sucks. She's like a shitty person. She doesn't talk to her father. She doesn't talk to her sister. She's a real piece of shit. Like, I mean, I don't, the story is she doesn't talk to, well-documented Brittany Griner, who was in Russia forever in jail, does not talk to her. There's an insinuation that she doesn't like gay women in particular, but like unverified. The story might have actually outed somebody, which is not great. But
I don't know how you recruit if you're a women's basketball coach and you don't like gay women, but she won an Natty, so continue.
Yeah, it's Angel Reese, her star player right now, was suspended 4 games earlier this year for very unknown reasons. That it sounds like there's controlling of hairstyles. It was a wild piece in that it said absolutely nothing that in some ways you didn't already know. But I feel like it also generated way more press because of Kim herself fighting it. So anyway, it's well written. I will say that it's a great article. Folks should check it out. But like, if you've watched any amount, truly even one game, you will be unsurprised by anything that was written there. Which is kind of, in some ways, like, I think my criticism of Kim Mulkey more than anything else is that don't be an ass to the media because you created this situation. You created this situation for yourself.
Yeah. And just to contrast, you already brought up Tom. I think this is part of why Tom is so available. And this is what he said on his little podcast tour. Not explicitly, but he was getting around to it, was like, part of the reason why I make myself so available is that I get the benefit of the doubt on things because people know me. I let people know me. I let people know the program. I let people see the stuff. And then when I say something dumb, it goes through that filter of local media that know and understand the dumb stuff that I have the capacity of saying, and they sort of translate for me to everyone else. It doesn't get over to Ken Pom, calls himself KP on Twitter. He still doesn't understand it. I think he still genuinely doesn't get what Tom was actually attempting to say. But that's fine because as I said last week, the fact that Ken Pom wasn't aware of all the other times that Tom Izzo put his foot in his mouth tells me that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
But that's
Tom was actually,
that's why you're so transparent.
By the way, Tom was his most articulate I think I've ever seen him about the transfer portal on Pardon My Take by a wide margin. Mm-hmm. Talked about the percentage of players who go pro, like even including overseas, and was adamant like if like 3% are going pro, then getting a degree is actually important. So when you transfer, credits don't come with you. Like you've delayed it. You're not on scholarship anymore at some point in time. Like it was his most articulate by a long ways. But, you know, Pardon My Take is a podcast that sits second to this one. So, you know, next up, Greg, this felt like it might be near and dear to your heart. The NCAA is looking. Well, you have opinions about the way that gambling is promoted. Mm-hmm. But so the NCAA
this is maybe the one area
where bets.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a prop bet is for listeners who might not know?
All 2 or 3 of them that might not know what a prop bet is. Basically, a prop bet is and I'm just going to use this colloquially. Maybe there's a better written definition of it, but it would be a bet that's not on the game itself. It's not the plus minus. It's not who's favored by what. It's like X player does Y thing, or which team will do blank first. Normies
who
will
scores
see these.
First bucket.
Yes, normies will see these most often with the Super Bowl. The media will always grab a few, like Vegas has crazy prop bets on the Super Bowl. Which player will throw up first on the field. Whatever it is. So the NCAA is thinking about getting rid of those prop bets, and the story behind that is there is
they don't have any control.
Correct. There's a lot of stories already. Not just in college basketball and professional basketball, but across all sports, about fraud happening in game. And a lot of it can happen around prop bets in particular. This just popped off in the NBA because you can have prop bets about individual players, which means that those individual players can really affect those prop bets. They can choose what they do and do not do. They can, take sides. They can have people bet on their behalf. And then also the other side of that, and this is another subject that I think particularly NBA players have been commenting on recently, is like, I'm aware of what the prop bets are for me, and it affects me, and I understand. I see it. This relates to another topic we just talked about. I see it in social media. People come at me for not, letting them hit their prop bets. They're like, I don't want to lose people money. Puts a lot of additional pressure on me, and that's guys in the NBA. So you take that, you put that on college kids. One, you really open up the possibilities for fraud. And two, you put a huge additional layer of pressure on them for these prop bets. So
yeah,
I've always been, if I'm being honest with you, dear listener, I've always been pretty pearl graspy over gambling. It's not my thing. You don't listen to this podcast because of the gambling. Though
it is,
but we are
100%
on gambling suggestions. So do keep that in mind. But we didn't love it when MSU took the Caesars money. I didn't love seeing JP Smooth up there.
We didn't love the way they did it either.
Yeah,
hey,
I didn't
love find this.
Alan. I mean, it's what drives Alan to drinking, knowing that we've all read his emails saying no one's going to read this email, right?
If you want to pick the one reason Alan Haller should not be AD any longer, truly it is that level of, it's not just asking the question, it's asking the question from the email that can indeed get FOIA'd.
And did. And lo, we all read it. But it's a thing that the NCAA is going to ask nicely of. And I hope that these gambling apps, and I hope Vegas will be like, you know what? That's fair.
Congress even.
Yeah, or Congress, for sure. But also give credit to the NCAA. And I don't know if they'll stick to the guns on this, because I can just as easily see someday, 20 years from now, you're at Spartan Stadium and it goes over the Spartan Stadium Jumbotron. Who's the next team to score? Open up your MSU betting app and choose. It could go that way just as easily. I think we're headed that way in the professional leagues, almost certainly. And I can't imagine that once that's culturally acceptable, college is that far behind, especially, and this is again getting into subjects for the summer, especially as football in particular sort of breaks further and further away from the collegiate model that we've all accepted, I guess is the word I'll use, for the last 100 years.
It becomes it almost, it starts to feel like everyone in the stadium is playing a game of craps with actual people on the field. Mm-hmm. Like, you're putting the prop bet in on the field with everybody else. Yeah, not great. Don't love that. That's not what we fell in love with. Even with tides shifting, as it relates to what the collegiate model is, that's not what led me to like college sports.
Right.
All right, last thing. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but for listeners who don't know, there's a major difference between the women's and men's tournament in that the women's tournament is played at home sites for the first weekend. Ends up, there was a bit of a bad experience for the University of Utah heading up to Spokane to play Gonzaga. Stayed in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Because if you don't know your geography, Spokane is basically so far east in Washington that it's Idaho.
And for those of you who haven't been paying attention to politics, if we want to call it that, Idaho is batshit crazy. And so the University of Utah women's team rolled up there, had more than one menacing encounter with people dropping the N-word and making threatening sounds with their trucks, and had to be relocated. And so what was interesting when Greg and I first started sort of chatting about this or commenting on it was that I was struck by the fact that the NCAA, in a moment of ignorance, the NCAA at times has used its power of the purse to get states to change their policies that are backwards. And so I was like, I'm surprised that they didn't do something here, not knowing that first, the location was in Spokane, and second, that the reason it was in Spokane is because the women's team play home sites early in the tournament. If that sort of moment isn't enough to float your boat as to why maybe this should change in the women's tournament, attendance is a reason. The women's tournament, irrespective of Caitlin Clark and her celebrity status, has been gaining viewership year over year, like an insane percentage. I think 74% over last year, which included Caitlin Clark. And then also looking at this year's tournament and Caitlin Clark specifically, I don't know if you saw this. It seems that the refs were willing Iowa to success in their early round games at home, to the point that it felt maybe like the fix was in.
Maybe the home cooking.
And so it just seems that the tournament should be on neutral sites for a variety of reasons.
Although we hosted, the women's team here hosted a game at Breslin, and it was a lot of fun. I think Duke was here, beat Joanne McCallie at home. So that was a good time.
Oh. You know what? That's fine, because you had her husband as a professor, right?
I did not have her husband as a professor, no.
Easily
I heard stories.
Worst professor I've ever had by so much.
Well, it's the university two-body problem, you know? So anyway, it's great that the women's viewership numbers are up so significantly. Hopefully they can keep that momentum, and hopefully with that we can have true neutral site locations for these, because it is a real awful thing that happened to those teams, and not just Utah. Allegedly, this has happened to other teams that have stayed in Idaho as well. And those stories are starting to come out now. So,
yeah.
Also, just Idaho, get your stuff together. That's wild.
Idaho. Have we talked about this on the pod? What happened with the governor there? Oh, so during
Idaho
COVID,
governor stuff doesn't come up very often on this pod. No,
this is entertaining. During COVID, the Idaho governor declared that the state would not be mandating a mask policy. Businesses were free to choose what they would want to do. This is unsurprising. Idaho governor leaves for some convention of some sort, which means that the lieutenant governor takes over.
Yeah.
And says that was not far enough. Not only
there's a mutiny.
Is that the rule, but businesses are not allowed to require masks on their own premise.
Yes. Yeah.
Wild. Anyway, let's use these Twitter questions, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. First up, Andy Boyan asks, among the fan base / media contingent, what do we expect this offseason hype and expectation levels to be compared to last year? I don't know what sport we're talking about, Andy. So, Greg.
I think modest for football, certainly, and then definitely lower expectations for basketball this upcoming season than last season. I think the expectation level for football might be higher on this podcast than the general listenership, simply by virtue of looking at the schedule, looking at what's coming back, looking at higher expectations for the coaching staff. But I don't think there's anyone expecting this basketball team, especially if nothing happens at the center position, to be top 4 in the country.
Yeah.
I would put them at like 22, if that. Maybe even out.
And you hope your guards make a run.
Yeah. So lower and lower, an already pretty gnarly year of sports watching for the Spartoons.
What if I told you Xavier Booker was great?
Okay.
Does that change your expectations?
I guess it does. I would ask you how that came to happen, that he went from rough to great, but yeah, it's still, I can't imagine a scenario where I adjust up the expectations for this basketball team that significantly. Next up from Andy,
sure.
Jonesy, what are the top few contenders for the meme game for the upcoming football season?
Plum coming. Just Plum in his straw hat.
I want to see a lot of Aiden Childs' Zeke the Wonder Dog material. I think that gets straight to the heart of the matter.
Did you see MSU released a photo of Zeke the Wonder Dog? It's hard on today to ask whether anything online was true or not.
Okay.
It was April Fool's. But they released a photo of Zeke the Wonder Dog from seemingly the 1930s.
I think that would be an April Fool. I think you're our April Fool, because we're currently on like Zeke 6, right? And dog years don't allow for that.
That's like 42 years per dog. It's fine.
That's how long dogs stick around, right? If you love them and they're good boys, they stick around for 42 years. And if your dog didn't live to be 42 years old, you were a horrible dog
bad owner.
Yeah. Next up from Jared Bear. You get one night out with Graham Couch in East Lansing. What you planning for your date, Mike Jones?
Well, Graham's going to insist on a sponsor. So is Casking Company technically?
It is technically in East Lansing. Yeah.
Well, that's the answer then.
Maybe you could do both sides. You could do Front 42.
Graham's adherence to the live read is real.
Casting Company on the other. You could just go back and forth depending on the mood, you know? Next up from Jared Bear, what price are you willing to pay for an Aiden Childs spring football touchdown clip today? I mean, I'm with Jared. I could use something to look forward to.
Oh, I would pay a whole 2 NF tucks for this. That's
maybe
where I
even
am.
3 NF tucks. Thank you for the NF tuck. Around. Oh, they're
I get it.
Tuck coming. Next up from Beth Amaro. They're up. Sparty NFC is still up.
Yeah, we'll be with it. All right.
NFT, not NFC. Beth Amaro asks, forget games and scores this week. The Maui Invitational is back and I've made my reservation. Wow, Beth, very nice. What could be better than a few days in paradise between Purdue and Rutgers football? Plus, who's going to make fun of your backdrop when you're potting from the beach? So this is a reference to Mom's basement that's happening over here. Over here. I don't know what you guys can see because there's only a couple of us. This is a reference to your truly whatever that is back there.
It's fine.
What is that bulbous thing, and what unspeakable acts do you do with it? Everyone go to YouTube and look at what's over Michael's left shoulder.
It's like a container for corks, but we store something different in it.
It looks like you commit vile acts with that thing, and then you stab yourself in shame with those candlesticks to let yourself bleed out again because of your shame. Good for you, Beth. Maui, good time. I would like to get to a Maui Invitational at some point.
Beth's in Maui. No, she's in Kauai. Is that in Maui? Who's to say?
We're mainlanders. We don't know the difference between those things. No, Maui is not the main island. Maui's the big island, right?
No.
My Hawaii trip was ruined. What?
Hawaii is the big island.
Well, okay. So I had a Hawaii trip planned and it was ruined by the pandemic, and we haven't put it back on the calendar yet. So maybe I do it for the Maui Invitational. Mm-hmm.
You and me.
Next up from Beppe Plum, I bought a standing room only ticket and then chickened out of going because I would get home at 2 a.m. and have to work tomorrow. I regret this decision unless U of M pulls the upset. Then F those guys, and I'm glad I stayed home. U of M also short for ugly masturbators. Now you know.
Oh, you missed a Beppe, I think.
There's another one? There were 3?
Yeah. I think you missed one. I'll get on it.
Okay. Well, good to know.
Yeah. All right. My daughter used to see Denzel Valentine on TV and say, Dada. I thought she was saying I looked like him, but her mom is pretty easy. Should I ask him for alimony? 37% of married mothers have a higher income than their husbands, but only 3% pay alimony. Now you know, double shot. That's not... Either way, that's not how alimony works.
And also, Beppe, big self-own there on the passing resemblance to Denzel Valentine. A little bit. Some of those shots of Denzel Valentine back in the day, they're just like you couldn't make some of the faces that he made. I do like the idea though that a child would be like, I know my true biological father through the television.
Yeah.
Anyway,
next up, Keith Ski. If Sissoko can be Anaganye Jr. for 5 minutes a night, will you take him back?
No.
Who do we lose though? Who do we lose?
Yeah.
We can't keep the three-headed monster of suck can't come back.
Correct. You know what you've got with a bit of an asterisk on Jackson Kohler, but you know what you've got with those 3 guys, and you can't afford it. You can't afford the loss in productivity there. Next up from Kiski, how much do you suppose Booker makes in NIL? Jonesy. I mean, we've kind of danced around what we've been told. We don't know. We don't have the contract in front of us. But
yeah, he makes more than I do per year, but less than Aiden Childs, and that I think should satisfy all of your curiosity, Keithski.
Yeah, I think Keithski will accept that, and we won't be seeing this question again. Just send your W-2 to the Keithski. That'll help some of this.
I will not.
I think friend of the pod and guy that we're taking on a date in East Lansing has said on his podcast, and he works for the LSJ, that Booker is the highest paid guy on the basketball team, and
but sub 1 million.
The figure is high six figures. So,
yeah.
Next up from the Key Ski, more overrated Oberon release or Hop Spam? More overrated Oberon release or Hop Slam release? Well, the Hop Slam release, I would say, Key Ski, not really that rated. So that gives us the Oberon release, which I will agree is, it seems like the Oberon release is an anachronism. It seems like the product of a time when you didn't have bars with 1 trillion taps, and it was like, Oberon was something that was different and special and not on the market everywhere all the time. And now it's more like, we live in Michigan. We've always done this. Oberon in the spring. It's still special, right, you guys? Because Larry sold out, and now venture capital needs to cash in on what it purchased.
And it feels like also it's more people are just finding a different way to do Groundhog's Day, or like spring is here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we can all agree, if we're being real, if you're of a certain age, you had Oberon back in the day, and it is not the same Oberon that you have now. Not that Oberon now is a bad beer, but they're in the ABV, by the way, is a distinct indicator that they are different beers.
Is that true? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think it was 6.4 when we were in college.
Really?
Yeah, you remember, we don't need to discuss the thing, but you remember the thing that I'm talking about. And
I remember the thing. I think we might as well discuss. Yeah. Is there any shame in discussing the thing?
Only if we go through all of the beers brought.
So what Jonesy's dancing around is our freshman year. Our freshman year, he had
laid the groundwork of what's drank as a freshman.
Right. You go, especially in our time, you go to house parties, there's a lot of Busch Light around, right? We were like, we're in college now. We're elevated folk. Several of us are in the James Madison College. You know, it can't just be Busch Light all the time. So we had his RA, and it was his RA, go buy several 6-packs for us, and we had what we called,
each cultivated our.
We had what we called a beer connoisseur night. It was like we tested freshman year of college.
Modelo.
Multiple different types. So it was, I remember it was, Sam Adams, I think, was on that list.
Yeah.
Modelo was on that list.
We can blame KC for that.
Oberon was on that list. There were a few other ones. I think there was a Dogfish Head that we did that night.
No, that's too high end.
We didn't get that far.
No,
it was 6 beers that in retrospect,
Heineken maybe.
I think it was like Beck's or something like that.
Yes.
But it was 6 beers.
Honey Brown? Not Honey Brown? Brown wheat? No. Oh god, it's actually like a really cheap beer.
Yeah. And
Honey
you
Brown.
used to see
Honey
that
Brown.
one in kegs every once in a while, actually, at house parties. It would show up. But anyway, we were 19. We didn't know what we were doing. Those were the beers that we got because we didn't know better. And we felt very special that evening.
And Oberon back then was 6.4%, and it is not any longer.
And do you remember what won our preference test?
No.
It was the Boston Lager won the preference. For everyone's general preference was the Boston Lager. Yes. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
How we've grown. I say that as someone who's drinking Mick Ultra right now, and I would rather drink this than a Boston Lager by a lot. But yeah, Oberon's down to 5.8.
Okay. All right.
That's a sizable difference. Next up, Kate Wall. Why did good things happen to bad people? Purdue and Michigan advancing to the Final Four in b-ball and hockey.
We didn't cover this for the Frozen Four. Michigan's going up against all 1 seeds, including a Boston College team that looks formidable.
A buzzsaw.
So I don't. Well, I mean, Quinnipiac kind of took them to the limit, but still. So the good news is, if they're going to earn the Natty, they're going to have to earn it. Or they're going to win the Natty, they're going to have to earn it. For Purdue, similar, but with UConn. If they're going to win the Natty, they're going to have to earn it. So
don't overlook NC State.
Yeah. But I think we can all agree that NC State isn't exactly a buzzsaw right now. They're like a
DJ Burns.
That dude's going to play 7 total minutes in this this Final Four game.
You can bet I will burn my house down if that happens. I'm going to be furious.
Next week's episode, you're not going to see anything behind Jonesy except just the smoldering remains. But still,
no, my asbestos siding will still be there.
That oddly shaped thing that will also still be there, but we might not see it because it's somewhere else. Anyway, finally from Kate, P.S. I heard your words last week and understood what you truly meant. I accept your apology to Malik and look forward to hearing more about how much you miss him next year.
Kate, you and Sarah G need to get together because there's something unhealthy happening here. I specifically did not apologize. And I want to be clear, I won't. I did what I had to do. And I
Two things can be true, though. There can be times next year where we're like, it would be nice to have a Malik Hall in Malik Hall mode right now. But we also didn't apologize.
You know who we said
Never
that about?
Apologized.
Joey Hauser, except I do think Joey Hauser earned an apology.
Yes. Oh, we apologized to him, and
Joey Hauser became a rallying cry of sorts.
Yeah, when we started smelling that wet hay, we changed our tune, and it never got there with Malik. But there were times this year where I could have used just a little whiff of that wet hay. Next up from Carl, you do too much, bro. Is it possible that we've reached a post-Michigan rivalry era of ranking the most insufferable Big Ten hoops fan bases? So this is a very online question that maybe some of our audience will not fully understand where Carl's coming from. I'd submit that Illinois is easily number 1. Purdue is a close second. Is Michigan being so pitiable the culprit? If May is reasonable... Pitiable? Pitiable?
Pitiable.
If Dusty is reasonably successful, are they back on top?
I don't think that Michigan is pitiable, by the way. They're pitiful, but not pitiable.
Mm-hmm. Can I just point out?
I do think Illinois...
It's interesting that Wisconsin's not on this list.
Well, and I think there's some conversation about Greg Gard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take this off of the online realm, because Illinois fans they suck. Purdue fans are in their own right, though, quite insufferable. Someone you've neglected here, though, is Iowa fans. And hear me out. They don't care about basketball until they're good. They have a coach who's put together some good teams, so they get there and they don't understand the game. And it's like an alcoholic dad at a fucking t-ball game yelling at the referee or the umpire. Like, every call is wrong. Like, Iowa fans are truly among the worst in the world. Illinois fans have sophistication to the level of piece of shit they are. But I don't know. I'm surprised Indiana's not also on this list. They have the tramp stamp. Are they so broken?
I think they are actually just truly broken. There are 2 things, Carl, that I'll add to this. One, I know that you're talking about basketball here. You're not talking about other sports. But if there's ever a moment that you doubt how much you should loathe Michigan, go read the Big Ten Tournament Championship thread on MGO blog where it's just rife with things that will remind you of like, this is the most loathsome fan base of them all, truly. But then wild card in all this, Carl, there's going to be 4 new teams entering the Big Ten next year. And I have heard USC and UCLA fans can
hold my beer
doozies. So, I mean, it's just going to be a whole lot more hatred and resentment going around on Twitter moving forward.
I've actually had an interaction with a USC alum in the wild when I was trying to find out what I was going to do with my life post law school.
Mm-hmm.
And the dangling of networking and helping me out over me was the most condescending thing I think that has ever happened to me in my
that's
entire
what
life.
USC is for, right? That is the entire purpose of USC. So,
yeah, but like I could help you, but I need you to do one more thing. Yet, but still, fuck Michigan. They're the worst. Next up, Thomas Zambiasi. What's the most incorrect lesson the NCAA CBS will take away from this very mid-chalky men's tournament? Great question, because I think we have another question here later on about Sankey being right. It sucks. Not enough upsets this year.
Yeah. If your concern was they're going to put more mid-major conference teams in over the potential Cinderellas, I'm with you, Thomas. I mean, I think this is a year where the outcomes of these games reinforce that. The fact that Oakland only went one more game and didn't go all the way to the Final Four like a Loyola Chicago or a George Mason or something like that. Bad year for this to happen because we're the baddies in this one. Not necessarily Tom Izzo, not necessarily MSU, but we are part of a conference that will act in its own self-interest and throw its weight around, and we are the baddies on this one. And this year's
and it's taking the
tournament
evidence from football and applying it to basketball. That's they're taking apples and sorry to
applying it
you,
to oranges.
Like it really it really pisses me off.
Finally, from Thomas Jonesy, the football team had a huge jump in wins during that last eclipse year. Will we see the same this season? I was
honestly,
I didn't expect that.
I read that you were reading the last one, and I was laughing at this one. Thomas, I just want to say you have a career in being. What's the role of the guy that whispers stats into the ear of the person doing the play-by-play?
Yeah,
you've got it for baseball
the team
in particular,
statistician or whatever. That was good. I
Did you
wasn't
know
expecting
in the
that.
Harvest Moon that the right-handed pitchers have a win percentage of 8.999? No. All right, listener Mike Jones is up next. Mango Shada.
Take a shot.
Would you rather...
You take a shot before you read it. You take a shot. Take a pull. He loves it. Oh, he loves it. Look at it.
Would you have rather it ended the way it did, just getting straight up beaten, or get your heart ripped out in overtime? Holy sh!
Well, you answer that question.
Tell if it's bad or not.
Given that you're in some kind of state over there, you answer that question. I know how I would answer it. I'd personally rather have it the way that it was. I couldn't handle an overtime loss. It'd be too difficult for me.
No, I would agree. It was 4-1, ends up being 4-2. It's not, you can walk away saying they had the better day. Mm-hmm. And frankly, what I appreciate about it is that I can be pissed at the team. Like, I'm annoyed by the penalties. I'm annoyed by the lack of dominance in this neutral zone. I'm annoyed that they seemingly played old school hockey in a way that, like, not in a cool vintage way, but like, you played dumb hockey at times. That's something to improve upon. That's something to get better at. we throughout the season bested them head to head in a way that, frankly, can we say out loud, like, what really sucked about drawing them is that it didn't feel sustainable. You felt like the other shoe was going to drop because they were evenly matched games.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's heart dropped a little bit when they showed up in the bracket because you knew that was going to be a dogfight for sure.
If we got North Dakota, I think we would have entered that game with a lot more optimism. And that's not to say that I thought we were going to lose, but it felt like it being 4-1 was really lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's be clear. Michigan's an old team and a very talented team that has strengths that are our weaknesses. And we have some strengths that are their weaknesses, but like it felt really unsustainable that they were going to get the better of us. They were due to get the better of us.
Right.
So,
and finally from listener Mike Jones, could the first 4 months of 2024 go down as the worst 4 months ever regarding the college football playoff, March Madness, and the Frozen Four? If so, what did we do to deserve this?
I can't incorporate March Madness into this, but otherwise, yes.
It is kind of dark right now. There's no doubt about that. Next up from Mark Vanderhoff, given Jonathan Smith's lack of familiarity with MSU before he was hired, if it were up to you, what would you do to help onboard him to Spartanhood? What does he need to understand about the program's history, culture, rivalry, so he can lead it? I think actually, Mark, from what I've heard him say in the media, I have been surprised how well he understands the culture here and how appealing that has been to him. He's brought it up several times. He gets the gig, he gets the state school thing, he gets the chip, he gets the work hard attitude, he gets the we've had success but we have to sustain it stuff. He has had conversations with D'Antonio and with Izzo. I mean, I think he's pretty far along. I think he's farther along now than Mel Tucker was. Mel Tucker didn't work out, and we know that in retrospect. But there were also indications along the way that maybe Mel Tucker, even though he was here as a grad assistant, didn't get the place, didn't understand it. When there were Lambos,
was too busy looking at the next job.
When there were Lambos on the field at Spartan Stadium, that was truly different from anything I've ever experienced at MSU in a really weird way. A way that we like seemed to be working at the time, but like we lampooned because of how strange it was and truly out of place. So, Mark,
the one thing I would say is that if you when we were in school, maybe this is a little bit after, the pride comes before the fall. Mm-hmm. That comment. That game is one I would say, do watch. Do watch that game. Do watch the comments afterwards. And only because I think if you can understand how we felt in that aftermath, then like the empathy, right? I'm not suggesting that you need to absolutely get it, but I need you to understand the empathy that's required to hold this job. That was personal.
For Mark D'Antonio, the moment that I realized he might be the right guy for the job, not just some dude that we hired with Ohio State ties or was a position coach here. His first Notre Dame game, he's there in South Bend.
Yeah.
And it's on NBC. And the sideline reporter is like, something, Notre Dame this week, blah, 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 blah. What do you expect their resolve to be under those circumstances? And Mark D'Antonio's response was, I don't care about Notre Dame. I care about the Spartans. And he walked away. And I just remember being floored by it. And like, he said the thing that I wanted. I'd only known John L. Smith at that time. He said the thing that I wanted my coach to say. he did it to NBC. He did it in the belly of the beast. And I think what I like about the Jonathan Smith hire right now is I don't think he would answer that gruff in those same circumstances.
Yeah, he doesn't have that sass.
He doesn't have that attitude to him. But I think he understands why someone might. I think he understands what it is. So I think he would answer the question differently, but I think he gets it still at the same time.
Next up, Jessup. Anyone going to the spring game? What are the key things you want to see from the team at this early point in the season? I want to see Aiden Charles throw a pass.
I'll be at the spring game, almost certainly. So any listeners that are going to be there, Jess, coming up for the spring game, let us know.
You gotta give me notice. I need some time to get PTO.
Well, we don't know when it's going to be. It's not on the schedule yet. But you'll be the first to know.
It's 4:20.
Is it really
4:20?
That's easy to remember.
Yeah, that's why I remembered it, and I don't even partake. Like, it's next up.
Well,
Kate.
We're probably going to be there, almost certainly.
Inspired by the Pardon My Take Izzo interview, who could become MSU's hated player for the other teams and fan bases in conference next season? Is he already on the team, or does he need to come from the portal? Did you hear this question?
No, I didn't listen to every single word.
Big Cat said, it was like, I'm curious who you think, Tom Izzo, your most hated player has been. Because as a Wisconsin alum, I have one that I hate more than all others. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious who your most hated is. And Tom gave like a shit answer. Let's be real. He's like, well, I'm going to name all my great players. And
you should hate all of these.
And
what was Big Cat's? Who was it for Big Cat?
I'm actually super curious. I'm going to give you a hint. Well, it's actually not that large of a range, but it's from the time we were in school to present. Who do you think the most hated MSU player might be by a Big Ten fan base? And if you're like confused, I'm happy to give you a hint.
Okay, give me a hint so I can get it faster. Give me a hint.
Wisconsin feels like maybe they're looking in the mirror a little bit with this selection.
White dude. It's always a white dude. It's every Big Ten hated player is a white dude because as a fan base, so Suton?
Paul Davis.
Really? He just didn't quite live up to the expectations. So that's very strange. I would have almost taken like a Drew Neitzel because Drew Neitzel beat them when they were number one. That would have been my expectation. Anyway. But
I think it's Trey Holloman.
Sure.
Oh,
if it's going to be anyone? Sure. Yeah.
Because he's a tenacious defender. That's the answer. Like I would hate watching that dude.
You just love saying tenacious defender. Next up from Mamopouleaf, Izzo's recent interview with Sports Illustrated speaks about all the help he gets from his great alums and what they should get, and that they should get more credit for their help. What do you foresee this graduating class getting credit for, and how will you help future Spartan basketballers? Truly don't know.
Do you think Mamopouleaf is confusing Pardon My Take with Sports Illustrated?
Possible. But Sports Illustrated is a dead brand now. So, like, Pardon My Take, might as well.
Deadspin.
Yeah. So, the more interesting thing is what do you foresee this graduating class getting credit for? Keeping the streak alive. There's a lot of credit for that going around.
But the thing is that the problem is that we've seen that now 3 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know who gets credit for that? Aaron Henry. That team went through a freaking gauntlet and performed. This team limped in. There's Malik Hall will get credit for for finally stepping up and being seemingly a very nice young man.
Yeah. And Tyson Walker will get credit for being a dog. And then also at times kind of giving up on defense, but largely being a dog who deserved better. And AJ Hogard will be remembered for his university wiener hot dogs. Finally, from a Maple Leaf, where are you planning to be during the total solar eclipse? And after the darkness is past, do you think that's all it will take to get Spartan Sports back on track and into the light? I have no plans for the eclipse.
Are we projecting like record cloudiness during that day?
I did my last eclipse on a driveway with a calendar, and I was like, I feel dumb even doing this. So I don't think I'm doing the next eclipse.
I just saw what the president did, and I reciprocated. So that was
you were like,
that's what I did.
I'll stare straight at
it. I had to sign a waiver. I had to sign a waiver for Blake, and I put on there, if it's good enough for Trump, it's good enough for me. So. Next up, Mr. Neurotic Pants. Can this U of M hockey team just die already? We won the regular season. We won the tournament. This will be the 6th time. Oh, Jonesy, make them go away. I'm sorry I made our team go away. Next up from Mr. Neurotic Pants. The rumors are that you all had a manscaping endorsements like the other shameless podcasters, but your jealous spouses forbid you from discussing your nether regions. Confirm or deny? I don't know that there's a more enthusiastic ad read Plum would do than if we had a man's. I have no idea what his scaping situation is, but something tells me, I'll just say this, dear listener. We've had some ad reads that have been cut over time. I have a feeling Alex Plum would lean into this one in a way that I would maybe choke him out.
Also, let's just acknowledge Manscaped did come to us at one point. We responded and they ghosted us.
That is true. That is true.
So we tried. We're willing to hear them out. They didn't bother to respond.
We're very affordable.
Yep.
Next up, Mr. Neurotic Pants. Feel free to lay into me. I spent $80 on a nosebleed seat for the game against Prairie View A&M next year. That might be the weakest team MSU has played in 50 years. I really just need to watch MSU romp. I'm not going to lay into you.
No. If you feel that it needs to be on the calendar and you need to buy the ticket so you don't have to worry about it, fine. Are the people around you in the nosebleeds going to have paid way less than $80 for that same seat? Yes. But if you need that, it makes you feel better and it gives you something to look forward to. I made way worse uses of $80 than that, my friend. So we're not going to give you any guff for that, and we'll see you there at the game.
Mango Shada. Buy 1, 2, 3, maybe 8 bottles. Who's to say? By Mango Shada.
Take the pull. Take the pull while I ask you this upper deck jerk guy question. How could you stand up to someone the size of Edie the way that Holloman did?
Holloman is easily. I don't want to know where my head would be, is I guess what I'll say in that scenario.
Yeah, it's not possible for me because I'm taller than Trey, and there's no one proportionally that much taller. So for you, it would be like standing up to maybe like a 5'10" person, something like that. So, keeping it proportional.
But
6-footer.
I will say that Zach Edey evokes a level of fury out of me. I've questioned how Tom Izzo doesn't get a technical in those games. I don't think I would have a problem. I would be as infuriated as anybody else in that place. So
next up,
Should Haller sit down with Izzo
down and draw out a plan for the next and bring in Nate Oates? We've got to work out. We have a real latency issue going on.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
we gotta get.
Do we need to bring in Nate Oates? It's not going to happen, as we already discussed. Of all the guys that might be the next MSU head coach, Nate Oates seems like it's a good fit for a number of reasons. I would bet
it won't be him.
I would take that prop bet. That's not him. And finally, why don't you have the KD Coop koozies on your beers for the video pod from the Upper Deck Jerk Guy?
We'd love to. I'm currently rocking a brand that is not as cool. KD Coop has lovely koozies, and folks should buy KD Coop koozies.
And we'd love to have them to show them off on the podcast.
If someone wants to buy them for us, by all means.
Manscaped,
all right,
maybe.
Greg, with that, it's been a lively show. It's been a great show, and I just saw your episode title proposal. Excellent. With that, good sir. Go green.
Go white.